Hello, hi, Om Shanti, and a very warm welcome to all our dear angels, invisible angels who have joined from all across, from various parts. We see we have around 64 participants. I know some have joined from Michigan, some are from Indiana, some are from Ohio, and a very warm welcome to all of you. This is the morning to be invisible. We are all connected as invisible guests here. And to make us all invisible, our invisible guest from Boston, our dear sister Rita, has joined us. And we would request Sister Lakshmi. Sister Lakshmi manages the Brahma Kumaris activities in the state of Michigan. And she's a very good friend of Sister Rita. So we would request Sister Lakshmi to introduce Sister Rita. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Can you hear me, Saurabh bhai?
Yes, sister. You can also turn on your video, sister, if possible.
Okay, because I was, you're blocking it, brother. I cannot start the video until you give me the permission. You have to. Okay. Well, I can start my video.
Can you try now?
It still says you're blocking it. How about if I just give my rendition of my love for Rita Ben? And you can hear me, right?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Sister Rita Ben, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Eventually, maybe the video will come on. But anyway, this is good morning, actually a wonderful morning. And greetings of peace and love from pure Michigan. And I have the privilege of being in Michigan right now. I've been here since 2000. When you recognize and start the spiritual journey, you meet phenomenal people. Sister Rita is one of the many whom I have met the 30 years of my travels, spiritual travels. Rita Cleary has worn many hats, still wears many hats. Her best hat is, according to my perception, is the hat of a child of God, Baba. She has several roles, but the best role that I know that she excelled in is in the role of a loving grandmother. I will never forget. I will never ever forget. She raised Anna, her granddaughter, from day one. Of course, she's a wonderful wife and a wonderful mother, and of course, a beautiful, beautiful Brahma Kumari. And I'm so fortunate that I got to meet her during my initial stages of my Brahmin life. I'm grateful that she came part of my traveling companion. Sometimes when it became very lonesome, I would call her up and she would just give me a beautiful advice saying, this is how you should do it. And sure enough, I still stayed on the path after many, many years because of her wonderful guidance, advice, and loving hands. When you meet God, you meet his terrific, loving family. I'm happy to have this opportunity to introduce Rita Cleary, my soul sister, my fellow traveler, to all of you. Thank you, Rita Ben, to come on call. I'm looking forward to you, your program, and a loveful Om Shanti, and make us invisible with your visible presence. Thank you, Ben. Om Shanti. And a note of thanks to Saurabh bhai for doing this wonderful program. Thank you, brother, and Om Shanti.
Thank you, Sister Lakshmi. And we have also the pleasure and fortune of having Sister Shubhra join us from Dayton, Ohio. And Sister Shubhra manages the Brahma Kumaris activities in the state of Ohio. So it's a lovely confluence of different families coming together. And we would like to request Sister Shubhra to share a few words of welcome to Sister Rita.
Om Shanti. Good morning, late good morning, early good afternoon to the whole Midwest. You know, Saurabhai, we've heard so much about this topic, and Rita Ben, you know, even in 2019, somewhere I had, you know, read about this and heard her, and she's remarkable, and I've heard such beautiful things about her. So just want to welcome her, and we are 14 of us currently joined via Zoom, and looking forward to what she has to enlighten us with. Thank you so much for organizing this, Saurabhaya, and Sister Rita, welcome again, and of course our sweet sister, you know, Lakshmi Devi. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. It was very beautiful to hear that heartfelt introduction. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Om Shanti. And on behalf of all of us, the Divine Family, a little flower for our dear Sister Rita to welcome her. You can all put your hands together to welcome Sister Rita.
So sweet.
So thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you. If you all have any questions, please save them. You can also put them in the chat window. And after the session, then Sister Rita will definitely take up those questions. Thank you.
Okay. So good morning and Om Shanti. You know, first of all, I want to begin by just thanking you for such a warm welcome. My goodness, you know, I feel as if I've come home, you know, that I've been away from your area, you know, but I've really never visited there. So subtly in some way, I'm feeling the energy and the love that's coming my way. And, you know, thank you so much for that. You know, I'm sitting here in my home in Boston, and, you know, yesterday we were snow covered, if you can believe it, in the middle of April. But today the sun is shining, the spring grass is coming up. And, you know, it's just amazing that, you know, the energy of nature, you know, becomes so visible, you know, at times, different times throughout the year. You know, so today I was asked to spend some time with you to do, actually, it was labeled a seminar on making the power of the invisible visible. But, you know, as I began to think about it, you know, I first thought about, well, maybe I'll do a PowerPoint presentation. And then I said to myself, no, you know, at this point in time where, you know, the world is in a place where it has not been before, you know, a place of stillness, a place of naturalness, you know, a place of reflection. And I said to myself, no, let me just sort of simply think about this as a heart-to-heart conversation with each of you. So, you know, just allowing myself in a natural way to share with you, you know, some of my thoughts, my experience, my reflections on this topic. And then what, as said earlier, that my hope is that we can just open it up and take questions so that, you know, you too can share and ask whatever questions you would like about this. So, you know, when we think about the invisible energy, you know, that we experience in life, I think it's very natural to think about it from the place of nature. You know, we know that there are these invisible seeds, you know, that are planted that foster the growth of these beautiful manifestations of trees and flowers and, you know, all types of things, and easily to see the results of the energy that's at work in the invisible. It becomes visible. But how much, you know, do we really appreciate that there's this whole incognito energy that's making all of this happen, you know? And I was thinking about the energy of the seed of the rose garden, you know, when the seed is planted, and then these beautiful roses come up and they share their beauty. And then at the right time, the petals begin to fall. And there's a state of dormancy in the plant where it goes into stillness, it goes into silence. And then that invisible energy begins to activate again, you know, and it comes to like a new cycle of growth begins. And the wonder that in the spring, all of a sudden, that invisible energy has brought forth a new birth of that kind of a plant. Or another physical example, you know, that we can think about is just think about the energy that is in that is in the electricity that we experience on Earth, right? So these currents of electricity that are flowing all over the place, you know, so that when we walk into a room, the only thing we need to do is switch on a light and all of a sudden everything's lit up. But how often do we really go deep enough to appreciate the magic of the current that's being sent to us, how it's been, you know, how it's been cultivated, and then, you know, through innovation, you know, everything created so that we have a whole electrical system throughout the world, sort of like the internet. You know, we sit down at our computer, we press the button, and all of a sudden we're connected to the world. But how did that happen? Just like being here today. Of course, if your password works, that makes it better, but mine was struggling this morning. You know, we begin to think, we can think so easily of examples that exist here in the physical domain. But today I thought, you know, the thing that we really want to do is to explore the more subtle aspects of invisible energy as it applies to the animation, you know, the movement, the process of our life, you know, of how we think and how we react and respond, and you know, all of these subtle aspects of life itself, these important aspects. So for me, you know, my whole life has been a search for this, for an understanding of how this thing called life is, how it works, you know, what's it all about? You know, I wondered, I can remember as a child, I used to wonder about how much, why there, like how much sorrow and pain there was in the world, and why wasn't there more happiness that I was seeing in life? Why was it that this thing called life was like a mystery, and I couldn't figure it out? So, you know, as a young child, you know, I began asking questions, and to this day, you know, have not stopped until I reached a point where I felt I was really beginning to understand and get my answers. I wonder how many of you have also been on a search like this, but I mean, I started out, I read every self-development book. I read every book of the different religions. You know, I was brought up Catholic. I almost converted to Judaism, Buddhism. I practiced for a while. I went to China to visit with a Confucian master to learn about Confucianism, you know, and then, you know, I talked to many different scholars about their thoughts on this thing called life, still trying to make sense and make meaning out of what was it that I still felt like I needed to know that I hadn't grasped, that would allow me to live my life with a full understanding and appreciation for what was, being able to accept what is and being able to move forward with that. At one time I was invited to come to China as guest of a Confucian master, and I spent 7 days with him and gained very interesting insight. And then one day I picked up the phone, and if you can believe it, I actually called Mother Teresa. Can you believe that? I did. I picked up the phone and I called Mother Teresa. I was inviting her to something, but we got into a lovely conversation about love that was just amazing. So the culmination of all of those experiences happened, and at the same time, I had this small group of like-minded souls who were also on their spiritual search, their spiritual journeys, who used to meet at my home every few months to talk about where we were and what we were doing to move forward and to understand these invisible aspects of life. And one day I was at that meeting, I was holding the question in my mind about, what is it that connects what's going on for me internally with the world? What is the connecting point? And about 3 months after that meeting, after leaving that question on the table for my colleagues, one of my professor friends called and they said, Rita, I think I found the group who may have your answer. And he had just come back from a trip to India, where he had gone to the headquarters of the Brahma Kumaris organization. And he asked if he could bring a representative from the Brahma Kumaris to my home. And he did. And it was at that point in time that I began to really understand, what it is, what is happening at the invisible level that's been manifesting for me and for everyone, in the physical world in which we live. So I remember a time when one of my first journeys to India to cultivate this learning. I've been to India about 30 times now, but I met Dadi Jenke, who has recently left the body at the age of 104. But when I met her, she was in her 70s, early 70s, and I asked her, about my questions, about life and what I needed to understand and how I would begin a process of understanding, and how once I had that understanding, how could I bring about a change in myself that would allow me to live my life at my highest potential. And what she said to me was something that I've never forgotten. She said that everything begins in the heart. She said the heart has to be clean and the intellect has to be clear. And I said to myself, wow, clean heart, clear intellect. I thought I had that. But then what she said to me was, she said that it's not until, you take the time to understand what the heart really is and what the intellect is. And at that time, once you understand that, you can begin your journey of transformation. So shortly after that, I sat with one of the teachers of the BKs, and they began to explain to me the concepts that were taught in Raja Yoga meditation. And the first concept that was taught was all about where the invisible power of our human being exists, and how it is that that function works. So just like a little child, what I did is I sat down with the teacher and I was told to listen to this as a story and to take from it what was right for me and to let the rest of it go. And so with my curious mind, I sat down and I just listened to how they began to talk about this beautiful shining star that existed in the center of the forehead, and how that, they said, was the eternal part of myself. It was the being beyond, something different than the physical body, but that it was a point of invisible energy that was eternal. And I said to myself, wow, that's interesting. What do they mean by that? So they went on to explain, how this invisible energy, the soul is what they referred to it as, how that's the place where the energy exists that activates the body. That soul is our living energy that animates, that puts us into action. It's like the driver of the body, they said. And when they went into the actual functioning of it, they spoke about how it's the power of our thoughts, the power of our feelings, the power of our intentions that create our lives. And I said to myself, that create our lives? And they said, well, along with the thoughts and the feelings and the intentions, there's another function that's happening within that soul, within that animated energy, that tiny infinitesimal point, the star that exists here in front of the pituitary gland. And they said the second function is the function of the intellect. The intellect where we make our choices, where we first discern and decide, and then we make a choice. And from that choice, we go into action. And when we go into action, what happens is the invisible, the thought patterns, become visible through our words and our actions. And I said to myself, well, that's interesting. Let me think about that for a bit. So as I began to contemplate, as to what does that mean, this is an interesting thought, but I'd never thought about my thought before. What I decided next was to ask for more information. Could they tell me more about thoughts? And the articulation that they gave had such, it was so specific, like the words being used, it really, these next words, it really touched my heart because I knew it to be true. So what they said was that, the soul has, this function of the mind where our thoughts come from. And, that mind has all kinds of thoughts. And I said to myself, oh my boy, I think I know that for sure, that I feel like I have 1,000, maybe many thousands of thoughts a day. And they said, well, actually you have about 60,000 thoughts a day. I said, really? And they were talking about at the conscious and the subconscious level, that many thoughts are passing through. And they also introduced the fact that the different types of thoughts had different types of responses, of that came out in us. So we could have positive thought, we could have negative thought, we could have wasteful thought, we could have ordinary thoughts, all kinds of thoughts. But the question that I held is, yes, so we have the thoughts, and yes, we have to make choice once we have the thought as to whether we're going to implement or not implement the thought, and that the thoughts over time create thought patterns, and so those thought patterns became more like habits, habitual ways of thinking. And so now that I was awakening to this awareness about thought as power, why was that important to me? This is the question. Again, I'm sharing my own story of what happened to me. And what I began to realize was that from this place of my thoughts, I was actually creating my attitude about myself, about others, about situations, about how I would address obstacles. And when I was in a place of thought that was not positive, I was creating intentions that were not positive. I was creating an attitude sometimes of arrogance or ego. But I also realized, now that they were telling me that this other function of the intellect, that if I could strengthen my thoughts by being aware of my thinking, that I could begin to make choices to do right action, to have a right attitude. And I wondered, how would I find the strength to do that? So what was explained to me next, was the fact that when we think, we're thinking from impressions that have been left on the soul as a result of actions we've performed in our past. In our past, from the time we've been a baby till now, but perhaps also from past lifetimes. And so, making the choice of whether or not I wanted to come from what they referred to as my original innate imprints of love, of purity, of peace, of happiness, or, from what was referred to as these acquired imprints of anger and ego and arrogance and greed, lust, all of these things, where was my thought coming from? And so I began to recognize that with this knowledge of these functions within the soul, that I had a chance at this moment in time to bring all of the learning that I had been, gaining in my search for understanding. I could bring it all together, and I could understand what I could do to gain power in order to be able to make the right choice. And I felt like the only way that I could do that was to go to what was referred to as growing up in the Catholic tradition, was to go to God, and to take, have a connection there somehow that would give me energy. But it wasn't until I came into this knowledge that was being shared by the Brahma Kumaris that I began to understand myself, first of all, as this invisible energy of the soul that was the driver of the physical body that was living this life, and that there was also a supreme soul, a source of light that was so pure and so loving that in that connection, if I could remember that source of light while remembering myself to be a soul, that I could take energy and recharge my battery, because energy is like a battery, right? I mean, you need to charge your battery. So this was the connection between myself and the spiritual source of energy in the world. And that when my energy would go low, the only thing I needed to do was to stay in remembrance. To stay in remembrance of that supreme source. And by making a connection through my mind, through my thoughts, this would happen. That all of a sudden I would be charged, and I would be ready, to live my life so fully. And the resilience that came from that, I'm still amazed. The resilience that we get, when we have this awareness of our true self, and our capacity, our capacity to love unconditionally the way that we're loved, by that supreme source. And with that love, there's this natural peacefulness that comes inside that allows me to see without judgment or criticism. This didn't happen overnight, and sometimes, my vision still gets a little bit blurred. But understanding that it's not just that the invisible's becoming visible, but through our actions, but the impossible becomes possible in that we can become more elevated in our thoughts than we would ever imagine possible. And in order to do that, in order to be that, one of the things that we have to do is we have to be able to let go. Let go of what? We have to let go of the past, and we have to be in the present. We have to let go of the fear, of the worry, and we have to learn to trust. One of the things that I often felt were that there were so many people in the world, because of life's experience. It was a terrible way to be, but I wasn't able to trust anyone. I wasn't able to trust anyone. And what I came to realize was that at the bottom of it all, the real one that I couldn't trust is I could not trust myself. I wasn't sure what was right, what was wrong, which way. I didn't know to turn right, turn left. Maybe you do. Maybe others do know that. But as a result of my life's experience, I had lost, it was so amazing. My career was skyrocketing, and I was doing really, really well, and everything was going in the way that I would want it to go. But when it came to actually, you know, the quality of my thought, the quality of what was going on inside was not matching the success that was going on outside. Now that may not sound clear to you, but it was true. That's what was happening to me. That the higher I, you know, the more I was moving forward in my career, there was more a question inside of myself about, gosh, do I really know what I'm doing? And I began to doubt myself. Doubt came into my life. But when I would go back into this connection, you know, I would begin to go, you know, to go into an ascending energy, that I would begin to understand again, you know, that with this kind of understanding of knowing the self as an energetic being, and knowing that I could change my thought and move that in another direction, I came much more into alignment. But that wasn't until I was able to take the time, which I think everyone needs to do, is to go into the heart and check to see, you know, is my heart whole? WHOLE. Or is it broken in many pieces? Am I carrying the past? Am I carrying the sorrow? Or can I let go of all of those things that have been hidden in my heart, the hidden invisible energy that has pulled me down and has made me tired and has given me reason to make choices that were not clear and clean. Now this is, you know, this is really deep stuff. You know, it takes a while to get to the point that you're able to go into that exploration. But even if we take one step in that direction, and we clarify and we cleanse and we polish the heart, you know, we put it back together again, you know, there is a resilience that comes. You know, there is a resilience, for example, in the situation that the world is in right now. You know, am I able to stay in peace inside myself and send love and happiness to others, even though we're in a time that is not so peaceful? It becomes peaceful when we let go of the fear of what's going to happen next. And we put our trust into something bigger than ourselves. You know, we're living, it's more or less, we're living on a stage. You know, we're all actors in a drama. And this act, this scene that's happening in the drama at this point in time, that has brought the people of the world into a standstill position, it's happened, you know, for a reason, right? There must be some reason. Nothing like this has happened before. Nothing like this has even been imagined before, right? That it could possibly, that everything could be brought to a standstill. It feels like it was in a second. One day we're out and about doing everything and whatever, and the next day we're all in stay-at-home, or the majority of us are at stay-at-home. And, you know, there's two ways that we could go with that. Is that the level of fear could escalate, right? And then the anxiety and everything that comes with that happens. Or recognizing, you know, that we are souls, that we are eternal energy, right? That we are beings of light, that we are those who have a power within us that could allow us to stay in a feeling of peace even during the chaos. But what we need to do in order to take advantage of that knowing is we have to come to know that supreme source, that supreme soul, because we've been in the world of duality, of positive and negative, for a really long time. For those of you who believe in rebirth, they say that we live in a macro cycle of time where we go from being fully charged to becoming those with little to no energy left in the soul. We're subject to the natural law of entropy in that time. So how we recharge the soul, as I stated earlier, is that reconnection with the divine source who reveals to us the whole of our story of how we travel as souls through time. And how we go from being like full moons to slivers of the moon. And how we can reclaim our fullness simply through the process of remembering that we are this invisible energy and that we are connected to the unlimited invisible energy of the divine. So, with that knowing, what happens is our practical life becomes so different. It becomes a matter of renewal. I almost felt for myself that with this study and practice, of what we would refer to as yoga, that through that study and practice, our intellects change. Before we were living in this very limited world of thought. We would think about ourselves, about our immediate family, maybe about our work and our colleagues and our local community. But with the unlimited, ability we have, and that we can recognize once we begin to explore the spiritual dimensions of life, the unseen dimensions of life, and when we can take that energy and bring it into the practical, then we begin to see in an unlimited way. We can begin to see one another as souls. We can begin to see one another as souls on a journey through life. And we can learn to the importance, of what it means to have a clean heart and a clear intellect, so that we can then act and interact with our friends and family and colleagues, in a way that is elevated. So what does elevated mean? It means that we're interacting with thoughts that are nurturing to us and to the other. We're interacting, with thoughts that are spiritual, filled with spiritual love. Because when the heart is clean, when the intellect is clear, the heart has nothing to do other than giving love. Can you imagine that? A world of love? And that world of love, that ability to love unconditionally, comes from the purity of our hearts. I know a lot of people think that, others may be able to do that, but they haven't had to live the world of stress and agitation and aggravation that I've had to live. I used to think that. And I wasn't sure that I was able to become that Because as I mentioned earlier, at some level, deep inside of me, I wasn't even trusting myself. But what happened for me was that through this search for understanding, through this search of spiritual wisdom, through this search for knowing myself and coming to know God, I developed not only a trust in myself, but I developed that trust in myself from the trust of being connected to a divine source that was ever pure, whose heart was ever clean, and only saw me at my highest potential. And then from there, when obstacles came, because believe me, they continue to come in life no matter what we know or what we're doing, and some really big obstacles came, but in the moments that the obstacle came, I knew that the obstacle was a test. So now the test we're in now, the whole of humanity, look at the lessons we have to learn. Look at the lessons that we have to learn at this point. Each one of us have different lessons, but there is a collective lesson, and that collective lesson right now is of patience. Okay? We have to wait until this passes, until we all heal, right? We all get better, from the fear that we've had to take in as a result of the virus coming. Even if we haven't had the virus, the fear that's come up for so many is something that has to go beyond. We have to go beyond. So the only way that I know, to take advantage of a time like this is to use our time now for self-care and the care of others, but in a way that's different than it is in our normal day-to-day life, or as it has been in our normal day-to-day lives. We've collectively been given a time where we can go inward. We can even go into stages of silence. And many people are not comfortable with silence at first, but what I've come to understand that is when we're in a space that in the silence, that I'm finding resilience. I'm building my spiritual powers to accommodate, to cooperate, to tolerate. All of these things can happen when I give myself the gift, that gift of silence. So it's like when I listen, I love music. I love to dance, actually. And when I am in a space of silence, it's almost like if I were listening to music, the way I could describe it, it's like I'm in the space between the notes that I'm hearing played. And to me, that's where life exists, in the space between the notes. In the silence in our hearts that allows us to see ourselves as we truly are. And to bring the strength with our spiritual awareness out in a way that we create the vision of our world, the vision of our future world, a vision of love, a vision of peace, a vision of happiness for all. And so with that power to make your internal soul power visible through your words and your actions, you can change your world. You can bring happiness to all of those who are around you. You can bring that feeling of peace and love and acceptance when we use our thoughts to think bright thoughts, and we use our intellects to discern and decide that we're not going to criticize, we're not going to judge others or the self in a way that will bring sorrow. Because in the state of soul consciousness, in the state of connection with that divine source, we become doubly non-violent. And of course, it's a journey. None of us are perfect. But step by step, day by day, if that curiosity of how I can become my highest potential, how can I begin to think elevated thoughts rather than thoughts that are going to bring me down and bring me sorrow? Simple, right? Day by day, year by year, all of a sudden, one morning, we wake up and we can recognize that we have become instruments of peace. And we can serve as an example of a lighthouse, that even in the darkest time, we can stay light. Not that we don't have compassion, empathy, but we can help others to reignite their light and to move forward in the world from a place filled with hope, filled with understanding, filled with love. And so, I think at this point in time, I'm supposed to stop talking, right? I hope the flow has made sense to you. But as I said, I just wanted to speak from my heart about the experience I've had. When I first came here, because I was a grandmother I came actually in 1989 to this practice and study. And, at that time, my life was very, very full, and unexpectedly inherited this grandchild, Anna, who is the love of my life today as well. And she, having her, I also owned a business, and I was working with a group of thought leaders over at MIT at that time. And I was doing all these different things, and I was, I had to travel, and I had so much going on. And when I first met Dadi Jenki, when I was first in India, I said to her, Dadi, I know there's truth in here, in what you're teaching. I said, there's something that I need to learn from this. And I said, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to do what you're saying needs to be done in order to do this. Because this was a life of a yogi, and yogis, they go up to the mountaintop, and they live at the mountaintop, and they don't have all of the worldly experiences that they have to take care of, or the responsibilities, I should say, that they have to take care of. But she turned to me, and what she said was that in one of the lessons, the classes that she heard, from, that divine source, she said that what was said was, this is the time, this time right now, at the darkest of the night and the dawning of the day, that this period of time right now, the impossible can become possible. You can stay in your household. You can stay with your family. You can stay in the world, in your career, with your friends and family, and you can do this. And I looked at her and I said, well, if that's what was said, then I think I'm going to give it my best, and I'm going to try. And so each day, a couple steps forward, a couple steps backward, just up and down, back and forth. But I can tell you, that my life has changed. And my capacity to handle all my responsibilities, came along with the cultivation of these original qualities that are within the soul, and it's made the impossible possible. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that you've enjoyed the comments, and I'm open to hearing any questions you may have. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Sister Rita. It was a very enlightening and inspiring stream of thoughts that you shared with us. Would like to open it up if anyone would like to share any thoughts. I think someone shared about that's beautiful. With my thoughts, I'm creating my attitude. So maybe Rita Ben, would you like to just share a little bit more on how our thoughts create our attitude?
Yeah. So I'm not sure if the thoughts create an attitude or the attitude creates our thoughts. So what is our attitude? Attitude has to do with feelings. So feelings are those, is the energy, right, that we have about any person or situation that we're involved with. So, for example, we can be speaking one thing, but we're actually thinking and feeling something completely different. So an old friend comes in, right, as an example, and they are always negative. So having that thought that they're always negative sets an attitude that when you're interacting with them, you're expecting less than what could be their highest potential, right? You're expecting it, and that's your attitude. So then you approach the situation knowing that that's going to be a response. However, if in real time, in a real given situation, you can change your attitude to say, this is a soul, they're going through their process, and I'm going to have good feelings about their potential, that they're able to communicate and understand in a positive way. So let me begin with that cleanliness in my heart, that I see them not as a negative person, but I see them as one who is open to learning, open to listening, and something good may come from this, or something good will come from this. So that's an example of what it means to have an attitude. Another thing is we see this oftentimes in healthcare, that when we get ill, that we have an attitude inside about the doctor. We have an attitude inside about the result of what's going to happen from our illness. We have an attitude about our treatment. And so if in fact, the mind, what the mind conceives and the mind believes, that's what's going to happen outside. That's the power. It's the invisible power. The invisible power of the soul. The invisible power of our thoughts. But what drives our thinking is our feeling. So you should check, when you're checking your heart, you're checking how you really feel about that. How do I really feel about that person that's been irritating me my whole life? How do I feel about that? And what you need to do is, with your intellect, you need to discern that you're using an old pattern of thought, and you have to decide to change that thought. So in real time, what you need to do is to take that thought out of your awareness, out of your consciousness, and plant a new seed of thought. about that person or about that situation. And then from that, maybe a new result's going to come. Maybe a new depth in your relationship with others will come. But you have to remember that all of the problems, all of the obstacles we have, all of the karma that we have created, it all begins with us. It all begins in the heart, with the feeling and the thought.
Thank you, sister. It's really nice. Anyone else would like to share or comment? You can feel free to unmute your mic or raise your hand. Okay, let me unmute you.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, sister.
Om Shanti.
This is Mohini. Your words were my feelings. When you were saying whatever you were saying, it looked like as if they were my words. I could never express, I've also come into this knowledge, very, very, very late in life. I was also a grandmother, and having gone through lots of experiences and having got the experience of trying to not get into this knowledge, I did jump into it, and I realized that this was the right path for me. I feel my life has changed, getting this knowledge. And your words were exactly what I wanted to see. Your thoughts, Emma. Thank you very much for making me aware about it.
Sweet.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mohini Ben. And there's another thought, another question from Sheetal Mehra. She says, how do I stop my ego from getting in the way of my relationships?
How do I stop my ego from
getting in the way of my relationships?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. Ego from getting in the way of my relationships. Well, so what is ego? Ego is that which I am not, right? And yet it continually shows up until I enter onto a spiritual journey where I begin to understand how ego is affecting my life. Ego has everything to do with the I and the my. I am smarter. I'm the arrogant one because I know and they don't. This is, my world, my, I. And it's not until we can take the emphasis off of our grandiose feelings about the self, and that we come to recognize that we are one of a family of souls. And in a family of souls, there's no higher or lower. There's an equality. That we all have hearts of gold, but what happens is, as a result of our experiences in life, we develop these mechanisms to survive, to protect ourselves. And I think for the most part, many people go through life, they don't recognize they're being driven by ego. And until you go onto a path of understanding of what it means to be in one's original form, one who is able to love and accept and one who is able to nurture and give. Until we understand that, there's going to be the bantying back and forth of ego against ego. And our relationships become like this. And that's happening until we get such a big blow that we have to fall down to our knees and we finally recognize that I have to admit defeat. This is not working in my life. I'm not able to have loving relationships. And usually it's caused out of a lack of understanding, a lack of acceptance and respect for the self. So until you learn to love yourself, it's hard to have loving relationships, good relationships with others. And you can't learn to love yourself until you understand from a spiritual perspective, what's caused me to reach this level? And how is it that I can change? So it's through a new awareness. It's through an awareness of the unlimited. Instead of being caught, trapped in the cage of my world, I'm able to go above, to become a detached observer, and to love from that space as opposed to a space of wanting to get something, of needing. So that would be a first step, I think, in trying to, make our relationships better. But the first relationship that we have to let go of inside is the false arrogance that we're carrying about ourselves, or the lack of self-esteem and lack of self-respect that's keeping us in ego as we put out a false facade. So we have to take off the mask and just be ourselves. Just be natural and loving.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Rita. And then there's another question from Kushbu Ben. How do I manage my emotions better?
Oh, that's a great question. One of the things that Dottie Janke told me when I came, I live through feeling. I was a dancer, and so I could pick up on the rhythm, of everything, and it's sort of like the rhythm of life. And those who are not dancers, I'm not sure you'll get this, but give me the question one more time.
How do I manage my emotions better?
Right. So when you're in a dance, there's a discipline, right? And in the discipline of the dance, it's more or less you're following an example. You're following the leader. You're following the dance teacher who's given you the parts of your dance, right? So Dottie had said to me, she said, if you don't go, if you're not able to go beyond your emotional response to everything, she said, you're never going to make it to the point that you want to go. You have to figure that out. So what it took for me was, it took a lot of practice, all right, of being able to put a full stop to reactions to different people and situations. And what I had to learn was how to respond as opposed to react in different situations. And that meant that when the emotion came up, I had to tell myself to stop it. Stop it. Just stop it. There's a very funny video, if you haven't seen it. It was Bob Newhart was in it, and it's called "Stop It." And because it's the emotions that cause a blockage in the energy that wants to move in a new way. So that practice of catching yourself in the moment when you're going into an emotional response, just stop it. Tell the mind. So it's like the intellect is telling the mind, stop it. Just stop that. That's an old pattern. Don't do that. And what you have to do is you have to replace it. The emotional feeling, you have to replace it with a response. So you have to become your own first responder. And then you'll see that it happens naturally. And what you're doing, it's not that you're not able to feel and be emotional, but what you're doing is you're just bringing it into balance so that the intellect and the feelings are working together in a positive way.
Thank you. That's really nice. And I think Shubhra-ben, there was some question from the family there in Dayton. Shubhra-ben, you can go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. We have one question here. It says, you spoke a lot about the strength and power of love. Can you throw light on the return responsibility of love and how to use it to make progress in Lockic and alokkic life? Thank you.
Yeah. So we've all heard the song, love makes the world go round, right? Love makes the world go round. But, in order to be in that space of love, there needs to be a feeling of contentment and peace inside the self. And the way that we achieve creating that space inside that is really peaceful, is through the acceptance of what is. Not thinking or trying to make it better, not thinking that we can fix it or whatever, but truly accepting what is. And at the same time, knowing that what is our friend. It's come to teach us, or it's come to give us a break if it's a really good thing going on, But life is about learning and accepting that at every moment, the only constant in our life is change. So once we've accepted that from our hearts, and we're not having even wishes or dreams that are peaceless, we then the love then it comes naturally, because when I'm at peace, my heart is full of love, and when I'm full of love, I have nothing that I need. And for me, the love of God, the experience of the love of God has taught me to love myself, which was one of the hardest things I had to do in life, was to learn to truly accept myself with my strengths and my weaknesses. I don't know about you, but I think sometimes we're really tough on ourselves. So, but when we do that, when we come to peace with we are A-okay, and we accept it, and we're working, making effort to change ourselves, to elevate our vibration, to elevate our frequency, to elevate the energy within, to bring the soul back to its original state, that's when love flows like an ocean. Because we have come to a point that we understand that we're immortal as souls, and that our original state of being is peace. And when we have peace, love is natural. It's an original state of being. And in that space of love, there's no desire. There's no wanting. There's only giving. And that allows the heart to dance and experience bliss, which includes all of the qualities of joy and peace and love and everything, purity. It's all in that bliss. And it begins with acceptance of not just my weaknesses, but also of my strengths, my potential, my original innate being, qualities. That's my experience of love.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sister Rita. Maybe this is the last question, and after that, maybe we could get into some meditation conducted by Rita Ben. This question is from Praveen. He says, how to overcome fear and elevate daily life?
So, fear, many people think the opposite of fear to be peace. In my exploration of fear, I've come to understand it as the opposite of love. Because with love comes trust. And with trust, there is no fear. So one time, when I was in India, I was in a place of doubt. I was in a place of doubt that maybe what I thought I understood, I really didn't understand. And maybe what I was thinking was right was not necessarily right. And I was doubting everything. I was even doubting if I understood God as a point of energy, as God, of God as a point of love. And in that moment, there was a very wise being who asked me the question, what is the motto of America? And I answered in a bit of a sarcastic way, I'm ashamed to say. I answered, in God we trust. And the words that came back to me have never left this soul. The words that came back to me were trust in God, and you will become a trustee. And when we become trustees, helping God in His work, her work, there is no fear. So trust in God is the answer for me as to how I overcame and overcome any fear that comes now.
It's very nice. Love that too. Trust leading to being a trustee. Excellent. Thank you, sister.
Hi.
Yes.
I have a very small, probably if time permits.
Sure.
Is doubt always a function of fear?
Is doubt always a function of fear? Well, I think you could, I think there's ways that you could, I'd like to give it more thought, but I think that it could be that doubt is a result of a lack of confidence, or doubt is a lack of faith, of belief, or that doubt, is a lack of knowledge. So no, I think that doubt can be felt as a part of many different attributes. But as it relates to fear, I think that fear is doubting ourselves, doubting what's happening in the world, what's happening in my life, and that the way to overcome all doubt, is to have the faith, to have the belief, to have the trust in whatever you have conceived, to be the divine source. And once you have that, then it's sort of, my feeling is that there's a canopy of protection that comes over the mind, that you no longer doubt yourself. And you begin to understand that you're just following the footsteps that will allow you to be safe, during every step of life. And that no matter what is happening, that there's some benefit in everything. We may not feel that at the moment that things are happening, but there's some learning, there's something good that will come from all the situations we have to face as we travel through life. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but that's my thought on that.
No, thank you. It did.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Rita. And we would love to get into some meditation experience. Thank you.
Okay, so before we go into that, can I just pick one blessing? Because normally we give blessings. Can I do that now and read one blessing for everyone that's on the phone? Or
yeah, actually, right now we are almost 60 of us. So maybe if one or couple of blessings, and we would all.
I just want to read one for everyone.
Okay, perfect. Yes, please. Yes.
So one of the things that is true is that usually when we have these types of gatherings in person, like when we were at the Boston Center, and I'm sure every other center, that each person at the end is given a blessing that looks can look different, but it's handmade, and it's each one is made so that it addresses that person that will receive it, and we sort of just pick them randomly, and when we hand them, people always say, oh gosh, that was just meant for me. So because there's so many of us online, and because we don't have a way of actually giving each one of you a blessing, I'd like you to each listen to this blessing as if it is specifically for you. There's something in this blessing for each one of us. So, oh, that's funny. So I just picked one from the group. I mean, I had a whole stack in case there was time that I could give it to all of you. And it says, you ready? Okay. It says, you are a born leader who, rather than focusing on what is wrong in a situation, naturally focuses on what is required to put things right. So repeating, you are a born leader who, rather than focusing on what is wrong in a situation, naturally focuses on what is required to put things right. Om Shanti.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So will there be music with the meditation, or should I just start?
If you could just start without music, is that okay?
And just a couple minutes, am I doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So focusing attention on the center of the forehead. I pull my energy inward. Into that sacred space within. Where I, the soul, the eternal point of living light resides. And with one thought, I remember my connection with the Supreme Soul, the one who is ever pure. And I open my heart to receive a current of pure love, of peace, and of joy. I remember that this is my original form. And in this form, a point of light in connection with the divine. I become like a lighthouse, and I send the rays, the vibration of peace and love to all souls in the world. And the invisible light of love touches the hearts of all who are suffering. Bringing rays of hope into their hearts. Through the blessing, the gift of love. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. I am peace.
Thank you so much, Sister Rita. It was a very, very beautiful experience. I would like to invite Sister Lakshmi to share a few words of thanks on behalf of the family. Lakshmi Ben, would you like to share?
Om Shanti Rita Ben. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I realized why I miss Boston because of the fact people like you, souls like you, fostered me, made me who I am right now today. So thank you so much. You still are my mentor. Thank you so much for coming on call. And with your blessings, you become visible to God's love. Thank you so much, sis. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your sweet words. So sweet. It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Saurabhai. You have
Thank you, Sister Lakshmi.
We'll do it again. We'll do it again.
Yeah.
You should come to Midwest, Rita Ben, when things become normal. I would like you to come to Michigan, be with us, the Midwest, to be with us.
Oh, I'd love to do that. Okay.
Yeah, that would be really nice. So now you're in the invisible, then we want you in the visible. And Shubhra Ben, would you like to share a few thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Rita Ben. Really enlightened with the talk. We have so many comments here saying it was inspiring, amazing session, and all of those beautiful things. You know, I would have loved to read, but we are out of time, and I'm sure you know. So thank you again, and thank you, Saurabhaya, for inviting Ohio, and we are very delighted to be a part of this. I mean, we would have really missed, something if we had not shared. So thank you so much, and we would love for you to come to Midwest, and please consider Ohio as well. We would love to have you here.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay, well, thank you again, everyone.
We have a few, so actually, thank you. Yeah. Go ahead. Who's that?
Sister.
Yeah.
Sister, thank you, Parivar.
Yeah, there was someone from Mauritius, actually, Gianna, who had joined and who also wrote a nice message. And I know there's someone from Philippines who's also joined, Sister Arlene had joined. I don't know if she's still here, but she had joined. So it was really nice. I mean, someone from London has also joined. So it was a very beautiful gathering of all the angels with our divine angel. Everyone, if you feel, please feel free to unmute your microphone and say hello and, Om Shanti or thank you to Sister Rita. Feel free to do that. I'm unmuting everyone.
Shanti. Thank you very much. Om Shanti, Sister Rita.
Thank you.
All of you want to unmute your mic and say?
Om Shanti. Thank you very much.
Om Shanti, Sister.
Shanti. Thank you, Sister Rita. Om Shanti.
Peter, you must come to Michigan. I'm going to meet you.
You must come here.
Hello, Trish. How are you, man?
What a lovely smile.
What are you doing?
Om Shanti, Rita Van. Never met before, but ऐसे लगता है it feels like we know you so well. And hope to see you soon personally. Om Shanti.
We're remembering from last cycle, right? Very sweet. Okay.
Yes, it's really amazing. And it was Sister Lakshmi's thought that we should have a beautiful gathering of Midwest angels, and it was possible. So thank you, Sister Lakshmi, also for this wonderful divine inspiration, and that brought all of us together.
Yes, and really from my heart, a big thank you for the invitation because it was a very special opportunity to be with you. And I will, I've got this place in my heart now for Michigan and for everyone there. So I'm just really full of gratitude. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Dr. Toby has written, Om Shanti, Sister Rita, you're a rare pearl. Have a successful day. Think globally. Dr. Toby Malichi, Indianapolis. Thank you.
Om
Shanti. Thank you.
Sister Lakshmi having, mentors like you. No wonder she's herself a wonderful person. This is Moini's. Undoubtedly, Om Shanti, Sister Rita.
Om Shanti.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you.
So I can go now?
We don't want you to go, sister. There's someone who wrote, Julissa wrote, God bless you, Sister Rita. Thank you for the wisdom and your prophetic words. And many other, everyone is saying their thank you.
Well, thank you. I feel that all from my heart. I really feel the appreciation, and I'm in gratitude back. It's beautiful. Only this family, right? It's a beautiful group.
Thank you. So we'll meet you again, Sister Rita, hopefully some other time. Before meeting you in the visible, we would like to invite you again for one of the sessions like this, so we can take more benefit.
Okay. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Thank you.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Om Shanti.
You are unmuted. 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 You are unmuted.
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't unmute for a long time, but yeah, thank you. Achha. So everyone have a blessed day. Om Shanti, have a blessed day. And thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate your time, your presence. And have a beautiful day. Om Shanti.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, family. Om Shanti.
And thank you, Parivar.
Thank you. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Saurabhai.
Thank you,
Sister
Moini Ben.
Lakshmi.
Lovely to hear you.
Oh, love to hear you too. I do hear.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Om Shanti.
ओम शांति। सर भाई ये शीतल मेहरा इंडियनापोलिस से ही है ना?
Yes, yes. आप जानते हैं? अच्छा।
मुझे लगता है जब हमारा भजन ग्रुप था ये भजन ग्रुप में थी हमारे साथ।
ओके।
जब मैं वहाँ थी इंडियाना तो मैं तो